Hello and welcome everyone to the Anatomy Lab here at Shelton State Community College. I am Professor Homper, and my goal here today is to help you understand better methods of study. Now, constantly, I'm always hearing stories from students saying, oh my gosh, how did I do poorly on this test? I studied so much and so hard, hours and days of study, and still managed to do poorly on an exam. Well, I tend to find that when questioning these students about the material that they missed, they still don't know the answers. They say that they just went blank, I'm a poor test taker. And yet, when questioning these students, they still can't answer my questions as they sit in my office. And I find that the reason that you are doing poorly, okay, the reason that most students do poorly isn't because they're not studying enough, it's that they are studying badly. They are studying in a bad fashion. They are studying in a manner that is not effective. So the goal of this video is to help you learn how to be more effective in your studies. I'm going to show you the methods, if you will, that I have perfected over the years in trying to do better in my own personal classes back in the day. So I've had an enormous number of hours in college, okay, an absolutely enormous number. More than most people need. I dual majored, I had all sorts of graduate work, lots and lots of time in a classroom, listening to lectures, taking notes, and then studying those notes to try to do well on exams. And rather than force you to have to learn over years and years and years to get to the point where you can do well, I'm going to tell you how I did it. The methods I perfected over years of collegiate study and found ways to study more efficiently and to be better at what I do. So, no further ado, I want to show you a stack of papers. This stack of papers contains a good bit of material from a class I took many years ago, and I'm going to use this to help you understand how to better study for your classes. And the buzz term set of the day is going to be mental game. All right, you got to get the mental game right. If you're not mentally in this, you're never going to be successful. So how do you get there? How do you get mentally to a state where you're capable of studying? You have to be able to look at your notes and think, well, this is not so bad. So let's do it. Now, first things first. If you are in a class, and if you're taking one of my classes, you're in a class that provides you with the PowerPoint presentations. If your professor is kind enough to provide you with the PowerPoint presentations that you're going to cover in class, then good heavens, you need to print this out. Not printing the PowerPoints is horrifically bad idea-wise, okay? If I'm providing you with the PowerPoints, man, print those out and bring them to class. Print them out, 3 to a page, 1, 2, 3 to a page. That'll come with the block of text here at the side, or opened for writing, I should say. Print this out and bring it to class. Printing your notes and bringing them to class is going to be a huge influence over your capacity to do well in that class. If you're walking in with loose leaf paper and trying to just take notes on paper, you got very little to no chance of doing well. I mean, I've done it before, but geez, come on. It's far superior to print this out and bring it with you. Now, what do you do next? You come to class, you got your PowerPoint presentation. This is going to allow you, rather than having to write everything the professor says out, this is going to allow you to do some underlining and annotating and really listen more and write less. The idea, listen more, have to write less. But you'll see that I have taken some notes here. Note the color. I'm taking notes in blue ink. All right, the idea is I'm taking notes in blue ink. If you take notes in black pen, or heaven help you, if you take notes in pencil, it's just not going to be a good way to do business. Because the goal here is that when you look at the notes, you want it to be at least marginally interesting. By writing in blue, I can tell the difference between the black and white printing of my PowerPoints and the things that I've had to say about it, or the things that the professor has had to say about it. The blue tells me, this is something else. If you write in black or you write in pencil, it just all fades together and it's boring to look at. And no one wants to look at boring things, so try to avoid that like the plague, all right? Use a blue pen. Now, you may have also noticed at this stage that there's a little bit of red on here. That takes into account the next step of our process. Now, studying is a time-consuming thing. You have to put a lot of time into it. If you're going to do well in class, it's going to take a time commitment. Nick Saban has a famous comment. He said, you can spend your time or you can invest your time. Spending time is a waste of everything that you're up to. Okay, you can spend time watching TV and not broadening your horizons. Our goal here is to get you into a better job with better pay, and to do this, you need knowledge. You can invest your time in this class, and it will pay off in the long run. So let's invest a little bit of time here, shall we? Now, we've been in class. We have taken notes. We have taken notes in blue ink. The next step is that you need to record your lectures, period. You all probably have a smartphone that'll record. Record your lectures. Record it. Take an audio recording. And then what you need to do is that day, preferably that day, but at least within 24 hours, you need to listen to your recording one more time. And when you listen to it, I would take notes in red ink. What you're going to do is anything that you missed, you're going to write that in red. Now that's going to do a few things for us. One, we're going to make sure that we get everything in the notes that we need. If the professor had something to say about it, it's here, okay? Like the main concepts, they are all here. Be it in blue ink or red ink, they are all here. But by doing the second listen in red, and by the way, we're only going to do this twice. So you're going to listen in class, you're going to listen to your recording one time, and then burn it. It's gone, okay? That second time, when you take notes in red, it's going to help you realize that there are times in class you're not paying attention. All right? I struggled. I will be the first one to tell you that I struggled. I'm mentally all over the place, all right? All over the place. So I had to find means of keeping myself conscious. I would have a real problem sleeping in class if not for bringing in a drink to sip on every now and again. Having some little food item like M&Ms, you know, something you could munch on whenever you need to. Something I could do with my hands just to keep me active. So in the lower moments of a class, I could stay focused, all right? But even in those facets, in that way, I would still miss things. And taking notes in red helped me realize what I was missing, all right? I would see, it's like, oh, halfway through the class, man, I must be falling asleep. So that's the areas I need to focus on. I'm clearly not paying attention during that time. And it would be noted in red. And I have another problem. I'm pretty intensively dyslexic. All right, it's a real problem. And amongst the issues therein, there will be occasions when I would be taking notes, and when I'm just listening to the professor talk, I would write it down exactly the opposite of the way they said it. So they're like, R molecule looks like this, and an L molecule looks like that. I would put, okay, L molecule looks like that, and R molecule looks like this. I would write it down specifically backwards. And I remember times that I would be standing around with some friends of mine in school, and we would be going over our notes together, and we would get to a subject, and they'd say, okay, this is that, and that's this. And I'd say, nope, nope, you got it backwards. And then everybody would look at me, because they all had the same thing, and I had it backwards. I would realize I screwed up, okay? I wrote it down wrong. By listening to your notes a second time, you catch your mistakes. All right, by listening to that lecture one more time, you catch your mistakes, and it'll help you to have good notes. Now, what do we have? It's all here, okay? Here it is. This is everything that's going to be on your exam. There it is. You got good notes. What's the next step? For me, I would be in class. I'd take notes in class. I would record the lecture. I would listen to it one more time and double check my notes. I would make sure that I have good information on the notes, make sure everything is there. It's all here, okay? I've got it, boom. I have what we call good source material. A famous statistical phrase is that if you put garbage into a statistical analysis, you get garbage out. You got to make sure that you're not putting garbage in your brain. You got to make sure you got the good stuff, okay? So by listening to my notes the second time, I know that PowerPoint right there, that contains everything that's going to be on that exam for this material. It's all here, straight out of the professor's mouth. What next? For me, I would always go home. I had these yellow notepads, all right, good old-fashioned yellow notepads, and I'd always use the yellow notepads because, again, for me, it's a mental game, okay? I see the yellow paper and I know, okay, that's the important stuff. That's what I really need to study. The yellow paper is what matters. I would sit down every day after class, after I go over my notes a second time, and I would take that day's material. You know, for my class, I probably cover 15, 20 slides a day. I would take that day's material, that 15 or 20 slides, and I would convert that over onto a yellow sheet of paper. All right, one sheet. The goal is pack it in. Like you can see this, folks. I'm really packing stuff in here. I'm packing it in as tight as I can get it. One sheet of paper per day. One sheet per day of material. You take the PowerPoint, you pull the information off of it, and you put it over here. So I have been in class and I listened, paid attention, learned a lot. I have gone and listened to the lecture one more time, and that allows me to hear that information again, and I understand it even better now. And then I take a little bit more time, and I take that PowerPoint, and I convert it over to this yellow paper. Now, I want to point out a few things here. If it's in black, it's straight off the PowerPoint slides. Can you see these little lines? That means that these are PowerPoint slides, PowerPoint slides, PowerPoint slides. The big line across means this is a whole concept or thought. This is a different concept or thought. This is a different concept or thought. You can see individual PowerPoint slides in here, but that's one idea, okay? One idea. If it's in black, it's directly off the PowerPoint slide. If it's in blue, that's something the professor had to say. If it's in red, this is a list. All the lists are in red. All the lists are in red. So these are the conditions for reciprocal altruism. There's 1, 2, 3, 4 of them, right? That's how this works. Black is directly off the PowerPoint slide. Blue is going to be something the professor had to say, and red is any list. Any list is in red. And what that allows me to do is I can see quite clearly what the concepts of the class were. Where are the important bits of information? I heard it once in lecture. I heard it again when I went over my notes. Now I've seen it a third time. And cognitive science would say that you need to hear things 3 times before you really understand them. Well, you've got your 3 right here. There it is. There's all 3 times. So you should be really having a good grasp. You should have a good understanding of that material at that moment. You should have a pretty darn solid grasp of what's going on. Now, once I have taken my notes from here, one day's material, and put it here, for my class, I do about 2, maybe 3 days per PowerPoint lecture. All right, so here is one PowerPoint lecture. The whole thing, that's a chapter. Let's say that's a chapter. We'll do that in 2 or 3 days. That means you're going to have 2 or 3 sheets of paper per chapter. All right, probably 2 pages per chapter is what I would shoot for if I were you guys. Now, what does that mean? Well, for one of my tests, you're going to have about 4 chapters. And 4 chapters of PowerPoints is a stack like this. All right, if you print them all out, it's a big old thick stack. You get a big stack of paper. It's all PowerPoints. And if you sit down, you're like, oh, I'm just going to study my PowerPoints. Let's print those out and give them a study. Just reading through that much material, it's going to take you hours and hours and hours and hours and hours. You're really hurting on the mental game here because you see that stack and you think this is impossible. There's too much information. There's no way I can do this. You're setting yourself up for failure because you're looking at that stack and it's like a monument to your failure because you know that there's no chance of getting through all of this information. You just can't do it. But what if you've gone day by day and you've taken every chapter and broke it down into 2 pages? Well, then, instead of having a big stack of PowerPoints, you've got 4, maybe 5 sheets of paper total. Something like this. Not much. That, come on. Come on. You see it and you know, hey, this is doable. I can learn this. I can make that happen, you know? Like this says lecture 10 at the top. The next one will say lecture 11. You get my point? When you see it, you're like, man, I can get through this. That is not the hardest thing on the planet. I can learn this material. It's short. It's only a page. Maybe before I go out and get lunch today, I'm not going to learn all this stuff, but I'm going to read through it once. I'm just going to read through it. Okay, here's a concept. This is group selection. Before I go eat lunch, I'm going to read about group selection. No big deal. Before I go to the bathroom here in a little while, I'm going to read about parental and sibling care. Okay? Before I go out and have a good time this weekend, I'm going to give the entirety of Lecture 10 a good read. Just the page. You know, it's going to take me 5-10 minutes before I leave. I'm just going to give it a read. Just throw it in here and there. It is reward for work. You're rewarding yourself for work. Okay? Before I do this, I'm going to do that. All right? Before I go to work, I'm going to give a read to this section. Before I get in class today, I'm going to give this a read so that I'm up to date and I remember what we did the last time through. Nothing blows my mind more than walking in to give a lecture and my students have no earthly idea what we talked about the day before. I'm just like, come on. You could have this sitting in front of you, and 20 minutes before class starts, you could just give it a read so you know what's coming that day. You're prepared for the next lecture. You've got the information that is necessary. Now, for me, I would have, again, maybe 2 pages per chapter. For my purposes, a week before my exam, I would probably take those 2, maybe 3 pages, and I would try to go back through, and if it's something I just knew everything there was to know about, like maybe you just understand what sesamoid bones are. There's no question, like sesamoid bones, you and sesamoid bones are best friends, like you get it. There's no need to write that down a second time. There's no need to study it. So what I would do is I'd take those 2 or 3 pages and I'd try to convert that all down onto a single page. That way I've got 1 page per chapter. 1 page per chapter. Maybe you just have a full grasp of the interactions between actin and myosin. Throw it out, get rid of it. You don't need to write it down a second time. Only write down the things you don't know. Write down what you do not understand. And for me, I would always try to make those onto smaller sheets of paper like this. This is a bad way to say it, but it's the truth. You think about it like you're trying to make a cheat sheet. Write down the things you don't understand. If it's something you know is important, but you don't have a full grasp on it, write it down again. Get that on your study sheet, okay, your study sheet. And what you're going to find is by the time you walk in to take your test, you have listened in class, you have taken notes, you have listened a second time to make sure your notes are good, you have taken those lectures and broken them down onto a single sheet of paper, you have taken those single sheets of paper for a chapter and broken them down into a single sheet of paper. You have gone back through it many, many times, omitting the stuff you know and only including what you're confused by. By the time you walk in to take that test, you should know every detail of that information because you've been through it and through it and through it and through it. I will never forget walking in to take tests. I would walk in and there would be folks sitting at these tables and they would have a big old stack of PowerPoint sitting in front of them and they're frantically flipping through, trying to study for an exam. And I had this amazing professor. His name was John Aho. He'd walk in, he'd laugh at everybody and say, if you don't know it now, you're not going to know it in 5 minutes. And he's right. Flipping through PowerPoints frantically before an exam, it's just wasting your time. I'd be sitting there with 1 or 2 sheets of paper in front of me. Just a couple of sheets of paper. And what was on there was the stuff that I'd written down 2-3 days before, which was what I didn't know. And at that stage, I knew all of it. So the goal here is to study more efficiently. Trying to just take notes on paper, you're going to miss stuff. We go through material fast. You're going to miss stuff. Taking notes with the PowerPoints is going to help you not miss as much. Recording it and listening and doing it a second time is going to make sure you got good notes. Converting that down into a smaller format is going to help your brain see that this is a doable thing. You can do this. This is not that hard. You can make this work. And further, by converting it down in that fashion, it's going to help you to find the links between the things that you're doing, realizing that this is a different thought than this. These concepts are important, but different from these concepts. These concepts are different from these concepts. It's going to help you put together mentally what you're actually trying to learn. And folks, that right there, that's how you study more efficiently. I hope that it helps you, all right? If you will sit down and try to employ these methods, it'll help you study a little bit along the way so you don't end up having to cram at the end, because that does not work. All right, so with that in mind, you guys have a good day. I hope this benefits you greatly, and enjoy. Thank you.